Well, hello and welcome to another Mindmaxing podcast. And I'm delighted to be here with Karen Sibley, a dear friend and colleague. We've known each other a long time and share many interests beyond education. And it's really great to be with Karen, and I'm glad to be able to share a podcast with Karen. So Karen Sibley is currently the Vice President for Strategic Initiatives at Brown University. And she is a founding dean of the School of Professional Studies at Brown University. And I was fortunate to watch her during that period of time and watch how the School of Professional Studies developed at Brown. And I'd like to start with Karen. We've had quite a year, which is an understatement in many ways. But I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and reflections on the last year that we've had.
Well, so personal reflections are interesting for everybody, although I think that our personal spheres have shrunk quite a bit to the four walls we live within, right? And it's lovely to hear people who actually are escaping those four walls by getting out into some of the places that you and I enjoy, Lee, being out on walks and enjoying nature and observing more of the world around us as we slow down a little bit. But I would say, as I think about higher education, but a little bit more broadly education, of course, the big issue has been the rapid surge into online instruction and all of the challenges that presented for institutions from K-12 to higher education, certainly for faculty, many of whom were not prepared to teach in that mode and hadn't had the opportunity to reflect on the difference in pedagogy that exists in that mode and had to learn it essentially in crash course. The same is true for the children and their parents and the undergraduates and the lifelong learners all around the world who had the same kind of experience. And I'm thankful for organizations that provide technological resources. I know Coursera and edX, for example, stepped up. I'm sure MindMax and many other organizations did as well to support the initiatives that were being rushed into action in order to preserve opportunities for education to continue. And I think, we started rushing at that in March and April, and then relatively quickly began to understand that it wasn't going to be a sprint. It was actually going to be a marathon. I'm not sure that as we entered the fall and schools were sometimes in person and sometimes online and have gone back and forth between the two and being closed and such, I'm not sure that we really thought of the marathon as something that could be a 2 or 3 year marathon. I think we were still in that hopeful space of, but 2021, we'll resurge in 2021 and we'll be back in our cozy residential classrooms and the world will become normal again. I think it is becoming ever more clear that that's not the case. And so that's hard in many ways, but it also is true that people have begun to appreciate the capacities that online instruction affords and to more deeply reflect on things that it enables that really residential education didn't enable, and not to call out one as better than the other, but just to say, if we can embrace both effectively, then we can really improve education and access to education for many people.
I appreciate the comment about the marathon, and I actually just reflected that you and I were sitting in your office talking about Obama's first 100 days 12 years ago and how neat that would be to put that online and have someone who's in political science from Brown running an online class around Obama's first 100 days and how much has happened in 12 years and yet how much hasn't happened. You know, and you were very eager to try and move things forward and so forth, and the largesse of an institution, as well as just higher ed in general, accreditation and all sorts of other factors, agility is not necessarily the hallmark of higher ed. So, but the
Well, and if I could add to that, Lee, it's also not the hallmark of the users of higher ed or whether it's accrediting agencies or policy governing agencies, right? I mean, as I worked forward, as you rightly pointed out, from that was a really interesting reflection. I do remember that conversation about Obama's 100 days. I think Penn actually did it, so we can go back and find out, right? But as I moved things forward and created blended programs in the School of Professional Studies, we began to discover that there were policies and restrictions inside the authorizing commissions in education, and we all remember that crush of effort around online usability and the 50 states and cross-border collaboration and all of that. I mean, that was a tangle of mess left by a government that wasn't ready for online education to become a reality. And when you went, never mind the 50 state, collaboration issue that we had, to cross borders and go out of the country was really, really difficult in terms of authorizing credit for anything that was offered online, because it was just viewed as somehow couldn't possibly be good education. And so there were roadblocks there, crazy roadblocks that I think had to get torn down by the fact that when COVID came, we had to teach online and appreciate it and give credit for it.
So you've had a year of the first part of the marathon. Upon reflection, what are some things you see happening in the short term, the next 6 to 9 months or so, as schools or Brown specifically have been thinking about how to plan for this upcoming, spring and summer and fall?
So there's certainly a greater deal of nimbleness, flexibility, and interest among the Brown faculty with regard to using technology for instruction. There's everything from I didn't know I could do that, to, I'm a person with a pre-existing condition perhaps, and I don't really want to enter a residential classroom anytime soon. So this online capacity is giving me a great ability to continue in the work that I love without having to put my health at risk. So there's the whole spectrum of people. I just had a conversation with one of our senior leaders last week about the fact that there's also heightened realization that we really have to commit to making sure that our graduate students learn the pedagogy of online instruction, because it will be a part of their futures no matter what. And I really like seeing the fact that our teaching center and the instructional design team that originated in the School of Professional Studies and then joined the teaching center, this was sort of a prescient move on the part of the provost, I think, because as the digital teaching and instructional group became very robust, and as the university became interested in sharing online capacity more broadly, there was a move to bring the teaching center and the digital teaching and learning group together. And now that move has been fully realized. They're excited to work with each other, but they've just been through the first part of the marathon where faculty so desperately needed their support and learned very quickly how important these people are and how much faculty can accomplish in their own instruction, in their own pedagogy, and in the classrooms that they enjoy online by using the assistance of these folks. And these folks are people who love to solve problems, right? So a faculty member can describe something that they might like to do, and the instructional design team will go figure out what the best solution for that is. So collaboration and nimbleness has become something that exists between the faculty and the instructional design team, a codependency that's really very positive. And I'm very hopeful that that's not going to be, it will never be eliminated, right? But I hope it doesn't diminish when the opportunity to return to residential classrooms more safely, I hope emerges by the fall. I think everybody is thinking that by the fall we can have our students back on campus so long as the vaccine distribution goes well. that we will still have to engage in very careful, thoughtful use of healthcare protocols, but that we might be able to have more residential circumstances. And I really hope that that's true, especially for young children who need to be together. We all need to be together socially. We weren't meant to be sequestered in our little caves. So I see over the next 6 months that there will be, I hope, a new kind of balance point, so that it isn't there's only one way to do things, or the best way to do things is the way we've done them for hundreds of years, that there will be an embracing of technology in order to do more and serve more effectively in the educational setting. And I am really interested just to think about where you're headed next, which is, I think, a further future. Interested in how this will affect access for people, because it should enhance access.
To go along those lines into the 2022 and beyond, I'd be interested in your further afield view. But back to that access question, part of what makes elite schools elite is the restriction or the difficulty to get in. And Brown's one of the most difficult schools to gain entrance to, as there are others as well. And I think your comment about the I'm paraphrasing, but the mutual respect between groups that may or may not have worked together before, faculty and your CETL group and so forth, that they that hopefully that mutual respect continues, and maybe there's more of an egalitarian opportunity. So, but anyway, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about, farther afield, longer distance, 2022 and beyond.
Sure. So first of all, let me say that my entire career at Brown, I think, was based on two undergirding themes. One being access. So creating a pre-college program that has now grown to a very substantial size. The driver behind that was to create access for thousands and thousands of kids across the country and around the world who might never be at Brown for a 4-year education, but who could have access to a stellar educational experience that all of my team and I hoped was going to launch those kids into really ambitious higher education experiences and aspirations, whether they came to Brown or went to any other institution around the globe. Secondly, the point of access of the master's programs that I worked on building in the School of Professional Studies was really all about giving the working professional access to the opportunity to learn at a place like Brown and to advance their professional careers through additional education, which was not something that the institution had been doing. So access is a theme for me. The second undergirding theme is collaboration. You can't do these things effectively without really strong collaboration with the faculty who provide the content, with the other teams of folks who help to recruit the students and support the student life experience, whether the student is in 10th grade or as some of our master's students were in their 50s and 60s. They still need the good support to go through the educational experience, which is a very different experience than their typical daily life has been. So to go to that point of collaboration, one of the things I was thinking about before we joined this call is the way in which medical schools have figured out a number of years ago, 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, that they should be delivering their content online, because what their students needed was nimble flexibility to be in hospital settings, to be in clinical settings, to be where the action was when it was happening, and to be on a treadmill getting exercise, watching the lecture from the faculty member, not sitting in a classroom consuming hour after hour in that experience. So I believe most medical schools deliver the vast majority of their content in an online way. Beyond that, they capture the online content so that it can be reused. So that's creating an efficiency for the faculty and a freedom of access so that faculty can do other things, students can do other things, and it expands the capacity of the educational experience. I'm hopeful for that kind of new respect for online education, to be sure that students and parents around the world, that corporations around the world, and higher education and secondary education around the world understands online content delivery to be every bit as powerful and able as residential, which should mean that you can gain access to excellent education, whether it's from a so-called elite school or from a really high quality content provider that really knows a particular skill field, whether that's in industry or in healthcare or in disaster and recovery, whatever it is. The access should be broadly available and highly respected. And I would really love to see more collaboration, because the fact that we replicate Chemistry 101 or a introductory math course, at 4,000 institutions across the country just seems so silly. And it seems to me that wonderful, wonderful faculty, researchers, and teachers around the country could create more collaborative capacity so that they could deliver truly excellent education in a more efficient fashion that might actually be a huge amount of fun and inspiration for them, never mind what it would do for our students. So I think a whole new world of possibility is perhaps now open to us. And I hope that higher education in particular will go after that and stop closing the walls of the Ivy institutions, closing the gates and keeping people out, and actually invite people in.
I think that's awesome, and I don't know if you remember me talking with you about pooling the foreign language across the Ivies and trying to, I mean, it's Spanish or it's French, and I can't agree more. Accounting is accounting, and let's put together 5 of the best accounting programs that address different learning styles or whatever it is that there might be several different flavors of that, but we don't need 4,000. So
right. And I think if we're also really thoughtful and flexible about the education, I love your illustration, whether it's accounting or a language, right? That a student can start into a course and then perhaps discover that the course is a little ahead of them or a little behind them, and that they could quickly shift into just join another one, right? And that there would be an ease of transfer for that, rather than, well, I'll just have to put up for a semester and then figure it out.
Right. Well, what are some thoughts you have about, I'll call it enablers or barriers to the progress towards access that you envision in the future? What are some things that you see that as potential barriers or potentially enablers that would help that happen?
So I think, and I think we've sort of both referred to this, the experience that we've just come through, which isn't over yet, is certainly an enabler, because people are discovering, whether they're on the delivery faculty side or the learner side, they're discovering that there are ways to use these tools that really suit their personal styles and talents. And that's certainly an enabler. And as I mentioned before, the collaboration faculty to faculty. I've been in a number of faculty meetings and watched and listened to faculty help each other and share ideas. And it astonishes me. I'm a member of the faculty in our education department. It has astonished me to sort of discover that this may be one of the only times that they were sharing pedagogical tactics in the education department. But this was happening because they needed each other. So that's certainly become an enabler. And I think also the entrepreneurs in higher education, and I count you among those people, are watching and listening and learning and responding to need. And so I expect that the capacity of technology will continue to improve, and that new capacities will be developed there. Already, initially we couldn't really listen to music like a singing group without it sounding like total cacophony. But new capacities have emerged, and people have begun to direct musical things where they can bring it together and make it sound completely beautiful. Or our own symphony orchestra here in Providence is actually teaching kids how to play instruments online, because they can't be in their own rehearsals and their own performances, but they can do this other thing. So new capacities have emerged as a result of that. I think on the barrier side, we've both agreed that the marathon isn't over, and we have to pace ourselves for yet more challenge to be met. And I think people are already tired. We all feel that, and they will be more tired. And so when you're tired, the thing you most want is to revert to your comfort food and your cozy fireside, or just crawl into bed, right? And so in similar ways, I think we so desperately want to go back to those comfortable classrooms that we enjoyed before, and the sitting on the green reading a good book and chatting with casual friends and things of that sort. We really want to go back to those comfort zones. And I think that would be a little bit of a barrier, but a well-deserved break, I suspect. And then, we'll see how people respond to a dualistic world where the capacity to deliver online education and residential education. I was thinking earlier in the day, we really tried hard with the concept of a flipped classroom, right? To get people to deliver their content online and then use the classroom time more effectively. I think maybe that concept will be more readily embraced. But I also think that we're all a little bit, we need to think hard about this. I mean, flipped classroom is not a very meaningful term. In fact, it sounds either cute or silly, and that's not really a way to get faculty and students to say, I want to be there. So we have a responsibility to take down those barriers of maybe sort of less than stellar professional engagement on the pedagogy side.
Well, great. Well, Karen, thank you very much. And I really appreciate you being involved in a MindMaxing podcast, and wish you the very best with your 2021. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Same to you.